We have a 22-year-old individual. His name is Sidi Mohammed Abdel Ahi. He has been charged with 6 felony counts of attempted first-degree murder, 7 felony counts of aggravated discharge of a firearm toward a police officer / firefighter, 1 felony count of aggravated battery with the discharge of a firearm. During the shooting, the offender approached a 39-year-old male and shot him in the shoulder without saying a word. As officers and paramedics responded to the scene, the offender fired multiple shots toward them from various locations. No officers or paramedics were injured at the time, luckily, but an ambulance was struck by gunfire. Officers then returned fire, striking the offender. They rendered aid to the offender, who was taken to the hospital, where he remains at this time being treated. The officer-involved shooting aspect remains under investigation with COPA at this time. The criminal investigation remains ongoing with CPD's investigative response team. Though this offender has been charged in this shooting, we're continuing to investigate the motive. At this point, detectives have been unable to interview the offender because of his injuries. Following this shooting, we were in contact with Alderman Silverstein and community members. We understand the concerns around this incident, and we're doing everything we can to ensure that the community is safe. And we want to restore a sense of security for the residents. There's been a lot of information circulating about the shooting, and we ask that the public not rush to judgment in this situation. We're continuing to investigate based on the facts and evidence available. We are thankful that the injuries to the victim that he sustained were non-life-threatening. This incident was also a stark reminder of the danger our first responders face, because they were also fired upon, and luckily, no one was struck. I'll now turn it over to the 50th Ward Alderman, Deborah Silverstein, to give her statements and address her community, or our community, as it relates to this incident.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. I am Alderman Deborah Silverstein, and I'm speaking both as an elected representative of the 50th Ward and as an Orthodox Jew, a member of the community so deeply concerned by this shooting attack. First, I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the officers of the Chicago Police Department who brought the offender into custody. The suspect didn't just target members of my community, he also fired at responding officers and paramedics. I am thankful that none of our brave first responders were hurt, and I am grateful for the quick actions that stopped a greater tragedy from occurring. We are gathered here today because of an event that has shaken my community to its core. This past Saturday, immediately after the global Jewish community observed Simchat Torah, a holiday celebrating the joy of being Jewish, a Jewish resident of the 50th Ward was targeted with violence. He was shot while walking to synagogue in peaceful observance of the Sabbath. The victim of this senseless violence should have been able to walk safely without fear, as every person in this city should be able to do. The individual charged now faces 14 felony counts, including 6 counts of attempted first-degree murder. These charges reflect the seriousness of this crime. However, I am concerned by the lack of hate crime charges in this case. While the motive is still under investigation, the community is rightfully troubled, given the nature and timing of the attack. We are a community proud of our diversity, tolerance, and respect for all faiths. Acts of violence against anyone, especially those that appear to target religious identity, are deeply unsettling and must be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. I want to be clear, no one in our community should feel unsafe because of their faith or background. And while we respect the legal process and understand that charging decisions are complex, I, along with many of my community, urge that all aspects of this case be fully examined, including bias or hate-related motivations. Our response to this incident cannot end with these charges. We must come together as a community to support each other and to reject hatred and violence in all its forms. Our city must stand with the Jewish community as we stand for the safety and dignity of every individual in Chicago. I urge everyone here and those watching to remember that hate has no home in our city. Today, let us be reminded of our shared humanity and the strength that comes with standing together. Thank you.
And with that, we'll take any questions that you may have.
Trey Ward with ABC 7. Alderwoman, you released a statement today and you used the word disappointed. What are your words to the Cook County State's attorneys with the lack of hate crime charges? And why do you think, you also said there's evidence. What evidence is there?
Is that something you want me to address?
You can address it and then I'll follow up.
You know, my community is always on high alert, the Jewish community, this act of violence, a man wearing, you know, the kippah as he was walking to synagogue was shot, and this has just escalated our anxiety, and our community would like to see this as a hate crime. There is, you know, here he was walking to synagogue, and we are very concerned.
Alderwoman Liz Nagy with ABC 7. Because your community is so tight-knit, can you tell us anything about the victim and his involvement in your community? And then I also want to ask the superintendent if this person has any sort of criminal history that you're looking into or any motive related to the Jewish faith.
So I did visit with him actually Saturday afternoon. When he was released from the hospital, and I'm happy to say that he's doing okay. He's still having to see different doctors, but he's doing okay and his spirits are good. He actually belongs to the same synagogue that I do, and you know, I'm just really happy that he's okay.
And just to follow up on a couple of things. One, charges for hate crime. Look, you know, as the Chicago Police Department, we do investigations, and our investigations is based on facts that we gather into evidence in order to present charges. Until we have those facts, we will not announce charges. It's about what we can prove at the time based on the facts. So we want to make sure that we're very deliberate about what we're doing, but we also want to be careful so that it doesn't look like, as the Chicago Police Department, we're speculating on anything. We want to make sure that everything that we do is based on fact. What I can tell you is these detectives up here and the leadership team, they did an amazing job of getting on top of this as quickly as possible and getting their charges approved that we needed approved. The individual or the offender is currently in the hospital, and because of his injuries, he's unable to be interviewed at this time. Now, we don't rule out anything at this point. As the investigation continues, we will continue to work on those things. And if we find out more information as the investigation continues, then we'll move on that. But until we have fact-based information, we're going to continue to do the work that we're doing right now to hold this individual accountable for the violent acts that he carried out on one of our citizens and our officers, firefighters, and paramedics. So I just can't say enough about the team, the work that these detectives did here and the leadership team to make sure that we brought some level of justice right now. As far as his background is concerned, those things are still under investigation. So we're working to try to gather as much information as we can. And as we gain more information, we'll just continue with this investigation to try to get to the bottom of the motive.
Charlie Marr with CBS News Chicago. I know you said that the suspect didn't say anything before shooting the 39-year-old. Did he say anything while shooting or during the course of the exchange with officers?
Yes, there was something stated from that individual while he was exchanging gunfire with officers.
What did he say?
And if I may, Chief of City, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, without getting into anything too much, the statement that was made while he was engaging our officers is nothing that we could bring in as evidence at this point that would support any motive against his actions towards our officers as well as towards our victim.
Was it believed to be English, another language? What did he say?
We're not going to be able to put out that information right now because I want to make sure I'm not misstating anything, and so we can coordinate through the Office of News Affairs because I am certainly not going to misspeak and have there be any misunderstanding about the statement. So as appropriate, we will get that information out through News Affairs.
And then is the suspect a resident of Chicago? Is the suspect a citizen of this country?
That is still under investigation right now. Right now, we're trying to identify a valid address. So we're still working on that information right now.
How soon could you make a decision about whether hate crime charges will be recommended?
When evidence of the facts present themselves. Again, we can't speculate on these things right now. We have to have information that backs up those charges. So we can assume things, we can believe things. And look, when you look at everything that's tied around this, I understand why the community feels this way. And they have the right to feel the way that they feel because, look, nobody wants to be victimized on their way to church. But when we start talking about the legal aspects of it, we have to have fact-based information in order to bring about those charges.
Emmy Victor with WGN News. When I was speaking with, hello, how are you? When I was speaking with a couple people, they mentioned the length of time that CPD happened to be on the scene. Was there anything in particularly challenging on the scene that kept police out for so long in that neighborhood on Saturday?
These events are always challenging. It's one, we have a citizen who's been shot, who's been struck by gunfire. So there's an investigation that we have to do there. But in furtherance, this same individual now fired shots at the police on multiple occasions. So now it goes from just being an investigation of an aggravated battery or possibly an attempt murder to a police-involved shooting. So we have to make sure that we collect all of the evidence because there are two investigations going on now. One of a person shot and another one of a police-involved shooting. This takes time. It takes a lot of manpower to do that, and that's why I can't say enough about the work that the detectives did here because they were working dual duties. So they're going to be there for a prolonged period of time, and as much time as it takes to collect all of the evidence to do a proper investigation.
Hey, Sue, Nate Rogers.
I'm good. How you doing,
Nate? Can you comment on how many times, I know COPA's investigating, but how many times the suspect was shot?
That I'm not really sure of right now. Do we have that information, the number of times? He was shot multiple times. We don't have the exact number.
Sure, and then also, with election season ongoing, I was in the neighborhood on Saturday and interviewed many witnesses. One neighbor who in fact told me that this was apparently the Good Samaritan that ran to the guy's aid, and he said that he heard him yelling some obscenities, heard the suspect yelling some obscenities. With this being an election season, with all of the unrest, of course, in the Middle East, is there going to be a heightened police presence now in that community with all of this going on? Can you respond to that, especially since clearly a lot of residents are on edge?
There already is. And here's what I will tell you. Look, we are aware of what's going on in the world right now. And we know how that can affect neighborhoods, communities, and people of faith. So we want to make sure that we're paying special attention to all of these locations. Look, it's not lost on us that there's hate paraphernalia that's been passed around. This happens often, and when we get that information, we take it seriously, and we make sure that we have resources in these communities to make sure that people are safe. We want to check in on people just to get the temperature of the neighborhood to see what's going on. It's one of the reasons that I met and had a conversation with Alderman Silverstein and members of her community and leaders just to make sure that we could reassure them that we're taking everything seriously. And we want to make sure that people are safe. And not just that, we want to make sure that people feel as safe as we can make them feel. So we understand the concerns in the community. We understand what's going on around the world, and we have our fingers on the pulse of that. And as a police department, it's our job to make sure that we keep these communities safe.
Sure.
Hi, Superintendent Stanley, Cindy Hernandez with the Chicago Sun-Times. I had a question in regards to Nabala Cafe, a Palestinian cafe that's been hit twice in the last 2 months. They've been vandalized and had their windows shattered. I just wanted to ask if you guys are also looking into possible hate crime charges on that.
Well, see, you know, we're continuing to throw around hate crime charges. The first thing is that we have to find out who's committing the crime. Secondly, we have to find out the motive for the crime. So we don't just go in and assume that everything is a hate crime, but what we don't do is rule out the possibility that it could be. So we want to make sure that we're looking at all avenues. And we could actually believe that this is an incident motivated by hate, but we still have to do the investigation to gain the facts to support that belief. So it can't just be about the belief. We have to collect evidence that supports whatever it is that we believe. Thank you. Thank you.